Welcome to Talks with Sheba, the place where real people give real answers on issues plaguing our community today. Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Sheba Holly. Thanks for joining us on this marvelous Monday. We aim to invite, excite, educate, and empower. So let's talk. Let's talk about women in prison. Ooh, we have someone here tonight, Pastor Debbora Hanna, author of this book here, On Opposite Sides of the Door. You see, I have it marked up already. Think about it. What's going on in the prisons? What's happening? How can we free our minds? Because even though you are not in prison, when you leave those prison walls, your mind may still be in prison. Let's take a look at what's going on with this video.
What is the procedure when you're punished for a disease you neither understand nor can you control? When the progression of your disease is promoted by the very cowards who sit on high and fill their pockets with your pain, sweat, and tears? What is the procedure when you live in a nation that forbids you to be anything or anybody? It forbids you. It forbids you. It forbids you.
America's women of color are being imprisoned at alarming rates. Prisons are becoming warehouses for society's unwanted. Among them, Black women are the fastest growing group. Chichi Lochi, an African-American woman serving 15 to life at Central California Women's Facility, writes, "We try to continue to believe in a justice system that offers self-help so that we can find the root of oppression, depression, or aggression. Vehicles to create a balance so that our inside can meet our outside, physically, spiritually, and most of all emotionally. Then there are those of us who give up because there is no hope, so they can't cope. When did we as a society start throwing our children away? When did we start caging our children and mothers without a care? When did we allow human beings to become commodities? When did we allow action and reaction to come before the solution?" Negative images of Black women as welfare queens, violent thugs, and promiscuous whores pervade mainstream consciousness. These images have become synonymous with criminality due to policies and laws that racialize and gender definitions of crime. Drug offenses, property crimes, and prostitution are the crimes that most often land Black women in the slammer. These are epidemics in the Black community which have their roots in structural racism and sexism. Poverty, homelessness, substance abuse, mental illness, sexual abuse, illiteracy, and domestic violence. They affect all women. However, their effects on women of color are unique because of a marginalized societal position at the intersections of sexism and racism. In prison, Black women's issues are conveniently hidden behind steel bars. Yolanda Mills found a family on the streets after she was abandoned by her alcoholic mother and faced sexual abuse in foster care. At 14, she started prostituting herself and selling drugs to pay for her drug addiction. She has been in and out of the pen since 1995. As more money is pushed into the prison system, less money is available for education, housing, healthcare, and public assistance, which could eradicate the need for more prison expansion. Once inside prison walls, women of color continue to face racial and sexual violence. Tamika Summers, a former inmate, writes, "The experience of being an inmate could be likened to one of those survival reality shows. Only it's not just physical. It's mental, emotional, and spiritual. It's unbelievable. I have never seen such chaos, confusion, and disorganization on a routine basis in all my life. I am appalled at the lack of professionalism and humanitarianism displayed by the staff. It's ridiculous, and many times illegal, as well as a violation of our constitutional rights. I often wonder to myself whether or not they have spouses or children, and that thought makes me shudder." When mothers go to prison, their children also suffer. Deprived of both a mother and primary caretaker, they are placed in the foster care system. A cycle is created as children battle low self-esteem, depression, and bad grades. Frustrated and distrustful, they turn to drugs and crime. 85% of children with incarcerated parents will offend themselves. Prison does little to prepare women for life when they are released. Inmate rehab resources are often reserved for men. Women who are struggling with drug addiction, histories of sexual victimization, or mental illness receive little to no help. Job training is limited in both its availability and usefulness. After release, they return to neighborhoods ridden with poverty, drugs, and gender violence. In addition to their marginal position in racial and gender hierarchies, they add the stigma of ex-offender, leaving them with limited access to jobs and public assistance. Rather than fixing the problems that led these women to commit crime, prison reinforces and exacerbates it.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long way from.
The stats are astounding. I would like to welcome tonight Pastor Debbora Hanna. Welcome, Pastor.
I'm happy to be here.
You know, I'm excited to have you here because, I mean, when everyone hears your story, they're going to be astounded. Mm-hmm. Mouths going to drop. Because when I read your book, I said, oh, my goodness. And you are one of those pastors that we can honestly say has walked the walk and talked the talk. That can honestly say you've been in those shoes.
Yes, yes,
So, and you renewed yourself. God renewed you.
yes.
You allowed.
Absolutely.
So let's start with your story from growing up. What is your background?
I was the sixth of 7 children.
Wow.
Yeah, for the most part, I had a pretty good childhood. One that I thrust myself into growing up really fast. Watching my mother, I love my mother dearly, but I saw her struggle. She struggled so hard to raise us by herself. And at that time, it wasn't easy because my mother dropped out of school in the 6th grade to take care of her sister, to make sure her sister finished school and got a better education for herself.
Wow.
My grandmother did not raise her children. They were raised by her brother. So they really didn't have a strong foundation. But my mother did the best she could. She was always a nurturer.
Okay.
My mother wanted to get married. She got married, and she worshiped the ground my father walked on. However, that's not what he wanted.
Huh.
She soon realized that the love she had for him was not the same love he had for her. So he left. He left a note on the table. One day, my mother came home from work, and there was a note on the table telling her to get on welfare, and he left. He left her to raise 6 children by herself. And, of course, being a single black female without the education, she really couldn't get a job that would, provide enough money to take care of us, so she had to get on social services. And soon after that she had my youngest sister. And I watched my mother struggle, and I know her faith in God is what got us through all of these tough times. But I was determined that I wasn't going to live like that.
Right.
Watching her was my motivation to do better for myself.
You know, that is really interesting. In your book, you said, you started off exactly the way you started in your book. I love my mother, but you wanted to do better.
Yes, I wanted to do better.
But you got criticism for saying that.
Because everybody, they don't understand the statement. My mother is a strong woman. She's definitely a strong woman, a strong spiritual woman. But we all want our children, we should want our children to do better than we did. Just like I wanted my children to do better than what I did. I didn't want them to make the same mistakes in life that I had made. Had I had a different outlook on life, had my philosophy been different, then getting married at an early age, having children at an early age, if my focus was on my education and finishing school and a career, then I would have provided a different life for my children. But the decisions that I made in my life was because of my children.
Got it.
When I worked in corrections, that was a job that paid a decent salary for me to raise my children by myself. So that's why I took that job. But that's not a job that I would have taken if I had the education prior to that.
Got it. So growing up, you have experienced many traumas. You were assaulted, sexually assaulted by neighborhood boys,
Yes, at the age of 11.
and you told no one.
No. And those were things that we just didn't talk about. And after they threatened to kill me, I decided to keep it to myself.
I understand you were 11, but you actually believed they would kill you?
I did because they had a gun when they raped me, so they took me at gunpoint.
Got it.
And they forced me into this. So, yes, I did believe that they would.
Right. As would anyone else. And you were 11 then, and you kept this secret. So that was a moment in life. What did you think life was going to be like after that occurred?
Well, I just began to internalize a lot of things. So I became an introvert. I held a lot of things in. And I believe that the decisions I made was because I didn't talk about it, was because I act on my frustrations rather than talking about and dealing with it. So when I started getting involved with men consensually, I sought after older men because younger guys just kind of irritated me. I thought they were just too immature, and especially after what happened to me, I was looking for somebody who could actually do something for me.
And protect you. I would think the father figure, your father being gone, someone to protect you because the young boys to you were reckless.
Yeah, very. Very. So my first encounter consensually, and even though I was too young to actually consent to be with this man, I was 14 years old and he was 31. However, he did not know that I was 14 because I told him I was 17 at the time.
Wow. Okay.
And even then, 17 is still a
Underage,
minor.
you're right.
So So I told him I was 17, and the first time that we were actually intimate is when I got pregnant.
At 14.
At 14.
So did you marry him?
Not him. I later learned that he was already married.
Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't know that until I had gotten pregnant. When I told him that I was pregnant, that's when I found out he had a wife.
So what did you do from there?
I had my daughter, and well, before then, I lost my sister, my youngest sister named Kimberly. When I was 12 years old, she died in a car accident. She was hit by a car.
Wow.
And when I had gotten pregnant, my sister Brenda and myself, we were both pregnant at the same time. And we both agreed that whoever had that child, and it was a girl, we got to name her Kimberly. So I had my child first, and I named her Kimberly. And for me, that was more so a consolation to me because I felt responsible for my younger sister's death.
Why?
Because when she asked to go with me, I was leaving the house one day going to be with my friends, and she asked me if she could go with me, and I told her no. And that same day, she got killed, and I just felt that had I taken her with me, then that probably would not have happened. So I lived with guilt for a long time.
Right. So here it is. You were violated. Your father left. You were violated by neighborhood boys. You lost your sister.
Yes.
And you were 12. All of this occurred at 12.
At 12, by the age of 12, yes.
Not even a quarter of this happened to the average person. Where was your strength?
I was still determined that I was not going to be a victim of my environment. It's just watching my mother struggle, wanting the things that the other children had that we saw that they were getting and that we could not afford. I was determined that I was not going to have that kind of life for myself.
So you should have known there was a seed in you already that was going to bring you to this point. I mean, so as you went on, you ran into these relationships. And again, it stems from a lot of hurt and pain that you've already experienced, major pain by the age of 12. But you talk about in your book, and I liked where you said you wasn't going to be a victim. And here it says, and you have scriptures in here. I love this book. And it's very easy to read. I mean, it's a conversation. It is definitely like you are holding a conversation with the world. And you say here, you can choose to become a victim of your environment or a victor because of it. And you said you became a victor.
Yes. Yes.
I love that. I mean, that really stood out for me. And of course, it resonates with the lifestyle that you lead. So, but before that strong statement was made, you were in tumultuous relationships with men. And the father of your children,
Well, there were two. The first one was my daughter's father.
the 31-year-old, we know about him.
And then I,
That guy.
and then I had a child at the age of 17 by
Okay.
a 36-year-old man
Okay.
who I later married.
Okay.
And that relationship was very, very violent.
Right.
I thought that being with an older man and settling down with an older man would provide me the stability that I needed in life in order for me to pursue my goals and my dreams. However, I didn't find that in him because he was jealous, extremely jealous. And I didn't know at the time that his first wife had cheated on him.
Got
So
it.
I think I paid for her mistakes.
So how old was his first wife? Because you were 17, right?
She was a lot older. I think they were around the same age.
Okay. Okay. So he probably felt like you being younger, he would have more control.
Hmm.
And you felt like you would have that leave it to beaver life.
I thought so, yeah. But that didn't happen.
You know, because when I was reading the book, it described how he would beat you.
We fought. It wasn't a situation where I laid down and took it. We fought. But with him, and I found myself in that relationship, we still struggled. He didn't want me to work. He worked, he paid the bills, but financially we were still struggling. And I did not want to struggle. I wanted a life where I had a bank account, where I wasn't struggling with him. He was getting paid every week, from week to week, from, month to month, just trying to make ends meet. I didn't want that. But that's what I had with him. And when I wanted to go back to school, he was furious.
Because that would make you better and you would probably make more money than he would.
Absolutely, and it was a threat to him. So we fought because he was jealous, and because his first wife cheated on him, he just assumed that I was going to do the same thing. But after years, like I said in the book, after years of being accused of cheating, I finally did.
Got it.
I wasn't happy about it, but by the time I cheated on him, I had no respect for him at all. Whatever love that could have been there was just totally destroyed by his jealousy. And there were times that when I found out that he had the phone calls forwarded down to his job, and I didn't know anything about call forwarding at the time.
Wow.
That was new. It was new then.
Okay.
And he had forwarded the calls to his job, and it never really dawned on me that the phone didn't ring when he was at work, but as soon as he came home, the phone would start ringing because he would have the calls transferred back to the house. So that was really a scary situation.
Right.
But he called himself monitoring who was calling the house. And I want to say this to you ladies. If you're in a relationship and the guy is jealous, or even men, if you're in a relationship and a woman is jealous, please get out, because they're not going to change. No matter what you do, they're not going to change. You're always going to be trying to justify your actions in order to make them happy. And if they don't have it in here, if they're not happy within themselves, then there's nothing you can do to make them happy.
So you were imprisoned and didn't even know it.
Didn't even know it.
You were already in jail.
Already.
So he monitored money, controlled the money, phone calls, communication.
Yes.
Did he monitor how much you visited your family?
Well, my family really wasn't even allowed to visit when they did come over, and which wasn't that often. He picked an argument. He always found something to argue about. So, of course, they would leave because it was an uncomfortable situation.
Right.
You know, you're in an argument when family is around. And not just my family, even his family.
He didn't want them there either.
No.
Interesting. So you went through all of this, but you mentioned earlier you were a corrections officer.
That was after I left my husband.
After you left your husband.
Yes.
And you did that for how many years?
Corrections?
Yes.
21 years.
21 years.
Yes.
This person who went through all this pain and tragedy just raised up like a phoenix out of the ashes. You became a correction officer, and that's a good job. That will feed your children.
It did. It really did. But it was during the last, I'll say the last year of our marriage where I was allowed to go back to school. I was working towards getting my associate's degree in health information technology. And 6 months before I graduated, that's when I decided I had to leave my ex-husband, because had I not left, then one of us would have gotten killed. Either he would have killed me, and I was determined that I was not going to let him kill me. But while I was working in the science lab, doing work study program, I had gotten a hold of some cyanide poisoning. Because there was an announcement on the radio back in the early 80s that they were finding cyanide poisoning in certain wine bottles. And because my husband was a functional alcoholic, he drank a 6-pack of Pabst and a 5th of Harvey's Bristol Cream every night.
Ooh.
Every night. So I had the cyanide poisoning, and I was definitely going to put it in his wine and watch what happened. But I thank God for a praying mother, because I believe had it not been for the prayers of my mother, then I would be serving a life sentence now for murder.
Yeah, and there was a time where you said in the book that you almost cut his throat and wanted to see his head roll.
I did, because he had a fetish with guns. He loved guns. And we had a lot of guns in the house. So every time he got angry with me, or every time he got drunk, he would play cheating songs on the radio, and he would have his gun beside him. But this particular night, he accused me of cheating. My youngest son, who is now 35, he was 6 months old. He was in the room with us in his bed, in his crib, and we argued. And he accused me of cheating. He says, "I'm going to kill you." I picked my son up and I ran downstairs, and I'm trying to get out the front door. And before I could unlock the front door, he stood at the top of the stairs and he pointed a shotgun at me. And he said, "I hope to God there's a bullet in here." And I thank God there was no bullet in there, because if there was, then I wouldn't be sitting here today. But we had a machete, or what some people call it or know it as a samurai sword.
Yes.
And it was hanging on the wall going up the stairs. So I put my baby on the floor, I grabbed the sword, and I went charging up the steps after him. And when I got to the top of the steps, I pushed it up against his throat. And a voice just said, "Push it and watch his head roll down the steps." Again, had I done that, I'd be in jail right now.
Right now.
For murder. But the only thing to stop me was my other 2 children came out of the room and they started crying, and I did not want them to see that.
Right.
But he had no problem with attempting to kill me in front of our children.
And I found that odd that you realized that. It was like it really didn't matter to him, but you had the goodness in your heart. Like, I couldn't kill my children's father.
Because I know how traumatized I was when my little sister was killed. I know how I felt.
Right.
And to think about what would happen to them if they saw that, and then for them to lose both of their parents, for the mother to kill the father, and then for me to be in prison, they would have not just been traumatized by what they saw, but also not to have either one of us around.
You're a strong woman, as I said. Still to come, the defining moment after these messages.
Are you or someone you know suffering from stress, anxiety, or depression? Have you experienced feelings of frustration due to lack of family and/or career support? Let's talk. Relationship issues got you down? Get the help you need. Contact Dr. Sheba Holly, mental health advisor and life coach, at clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DRSHEBAHOLLY. If confidentiality, comfort, and convenience is important to you, guidance is provided on your terms. You deserve peace of mind. Contact Dr. Sheba Holly, Mental Health Advisor and Life Coach at clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DRSHEBAHOLLY. Get answers now. Make your appointment today. Let's talk. Clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DRSHEBAHOLLY.
If you just tuned in, you're tuned in to Talks with Sheba, and we have Pastor Debbora Hanna on. And she's talking about women in jail, women in prison. So the defining moment, when you talk about in your book, on the opposite sides of the door, this corrections officer, what happened?
Again, I attribute what I am today and where I am today to the prayers of my mother. Because I believe had she not been praying for me, that I would have acted on what I wanted to do to him, to my ex-husband. But after I left him, and I was just tired of the violence, I was tired of living that kind of life. One day he went to work, and after he had gone to work, I went down to the school, transferred my children. I came home, I packed our bags, and I was getting ready to leave. But when I was getting ready to leave, he comes through the front door because he had gotten sick at work. And fear gripped me because I'm thinking, okay, either I'm going to have to kill him to get out of here. If he tries to keep me here, I'm going to kill him for me to get out of here. When he got into the bedroom, the cab came. I grabbed 2 trash bags full of clothes. I jumped in the cab, and I said, please, let's just hurry up and leave. And I left. I'm grateful, and I thank God for my mother and my sister. My oldest sister allowed me and my 3 children to stay with her and her 3 children.
Okay.
It was crowded. She had a 2-bedroom place, and she was gracious enough to allow us to stay there until I got on my feet and got my own place. And I think we were there for 2 to 3 months.
Oh, that's not long.
And then I moved out, and I got my, I moved into our own house, and I was grateful. But I thank God for a family that stood by me and was there for me when I needed them.
So you have in your book Brenda's story. Who's Brenda?
Brenda is another sister of mine. She's a sweetie. I love her dearly. Brenda's story, it's something how God orchestrates your life and you don't even realize that he's doing it. When I had taken a job in corrections, again, I had taken that job because I needed a job that would pay me enough money to be able to take care of my children without me having to rely on welfare system. Again, I was determined I was not going down that path. So I took that job, and I worked the job for approximately 15 years before I was promoted to sergeant. Brenda, her son was killed by her boyfriend at the time. She was in school, going to night school, trying to get her life together. And the police came to the school and took her out of school and took her with them down to University of Maryland Hospital, telling her that there was an accident with her son. When she got down to University Hospital, she had learned that her son was dead. Her then boyfriend at the time, he had beat him to death. And the police caught him. The police caught him. He had her son by the back of the neck and they throw him over the wall across the house from where they live. And had the police not caught him, what would happen? His body would have been there until somebody else found him. So when that happened, Brenda turned to a life of drugs because it was too much for her to handle.
Traumatic.
So she had gone through a 25-year drug addiction before God delivered her out of that. But how we wound up at the same place. I was a sergeant over at the Women's Detention Center, and I had only been there 4 days, and I'm making my final rounds in the prison, and I go into receiving, and there's my sister. And I was grateful because for years I did not know where she was. I knew she was out there, and every time I would try to find her, she would always evade me.
Right.
When she knew that I was in the area, she heard that I was in the area, she wouldn't run.
Was it because you were a corrections officer and she didn't want to tarnish your image, or?
I don't think it had anything to do with tarnishing the image. I think she didn't want me to see her that way.
Okay.
And occasionally, sometimes I would see her. Well, I'm driving my car, and I'll see her walking the streets, and I'll make her get into my car.
And you guys grew up in Baltimore?
We did. We did.
So what did you say to your sister when you saw her there?
Well, I was happy she was there, and she's telling everybody, that's my sister, that's my sister. So when the other officers found out that she was my sister, they pretty much looked out for her to make sure that she was okay. But I was happy that she was there. But because she was there, it was a struggle for me, because I was a sergeant at the Women's Detention Center, and I had to come to work every day and see my sister there. And I would call my mother and tell her, Mom, this is so hard. I don't know if I can do this. But because of my job, my position, I couldn't treat her any differently than any other inmate.
Right.
So I had to go to work, and sometimes I would intentionally avoid going to the floor that she was on, so she wouldn't
Feel like, or someone would think she was getting special treatment.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I had looked for a program to get her into, a drug treatment program. And after about 30 days, I finally found a program to get her into, and I was excited about that. And it was that time that I bailed her out of jail, and I took her to the drug treatment program. So that was the start of her process of becoming clean. But because of her background, and because she had so many aliases, and then she had other warrants, pending warrants, that she had to be rebooked. Rebooked on different charges. The first incident, when she went to court the first time and the judge released her, as we were leaving the courtroom, the sheriff came up behind her and said, we have another warrant for your arrest. So she had to go back down to Central Booking and be rebooked, reincarcerated, and then I had to bail her out again. When I got her out the second time, they found out that there was another warrant because she was using a different name. So we had to take her to the police district.
Got it.
And have her rebooked. But at that time, I wrote the judge a letter. And I explained to the judge who I was. And I let him know that was my sister. And I told him that I was going to be there to help her to make sure she kicked his habit. So when we had gone to court, he had determined that because I was there and I was going to help her, then that she would have a better chance.
Okay.
So he stipulated her to the drug treatment program.
Got it.
But
Thank God for sisters.
Again, thank God for my mother. Had she not raised us to be as close as we were.
Right.
But I look at Brenda now, and she's reaching out to help women herself who are in drug addiction, and she has this group called WRAP, WRAPP, and WRAP stands for Women Recovering and Proudly Praising.
Awesome. That is fantastic.
So I'm so proud of her. She's also the praise and worship leader at my church.
Yes, and about that, let's take a look at what's going on, what life looks like in a women's prison.
Count on.
There are mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives locked up in the New Mexico women's prison.
Many can't break the cycle of drugs and violence, but others are, and they're making great strides behind bars. Action 7 News anchor Melissa Mahan met two women beating the odds who have an important message for anyone going down the wrong road.
When I stood in front of the judge and he said, "You're going to prison," I was terrified. I can't even begin to describe to you how scared I was.
It was the day that forever changed Patty Shelton's life. A business owner and a mother sentenced to 3 years, 4 months at the New Mexico Women's Prison in Grants for check fraud.
You're told where you can go what you can do, how you can do it, what you can wear. You're no longer your own person.
Patty shared her story with us and talked about what life is like behind bars for the 574 New Mexican women locked up here.
This is where you live?
This is where I live, yes. 24 hours a day. This is mine. From where this little line is to right here, this is my area.
Prison isn't exactly what it looks like in the movies. No orange jumpsuits, no cells with sliding bars. Lower-level offenders like Patty stay in what are called pods, basically group living.
I noticed not too much privacy with the toilets over here.
This is all you have.
But even with no privacy, she still feels alone.
To sum up, prison, it's very lonely because you're in here and your family's out there.
But Patty doesn't blame anyone but herself for being here. She made up her mind to make the most of it by getting a degree, working, and helping teach a course to other inmates.
To me, prison is what you make it. It's attitude.
But many of them will be back. 44% of these women will be back behind bars within 3 years of their release. Their average age is just 32, and about 2/3 are mothers, many of them victims of physical or sexual abuse. 90% are here for drugs or drug-related crime.
Come here, Trin.
Bryn Arnold is in that group, hooked on heroin when she was just a teenager. But she too is turning her life around, working with the Healing Hearts program, training dogs for adoption.
Good girl, Trin. They help us to heal while we're helping them to heal.
She plans to work for a dog groomer when she's released next month.
Is there anything else you wanted to tell our viewers?
The women that are incarcerated and the men have just made mistakes, and that everybody does deserve a second chance.
You got one.
I did, yes.
You're not going to mess it up?
No, I'm not. Not this time.
But the biggest message these women want you to take away: don't come here in the first place.
By sharing my story, if I can keep one woman from ever coming to prison, then I've done what I set out to do, because there's a better life out there, and this is no way to live.
In Grants, Melissa Mahan, KOAT Action 7 News.
Both women told us when legislators make budget cuts, it affects funding for their education program.
You know, we never know what's going on. Television depicts different things, but this is real life. Pastor Hanna, you had a little bit more you wanted to say about Brenda, and then something that would kind of like change winds for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, Brenda, in addition to her son being killed, and then her drug addiction, she gotten involved in other relationships that turned out to be not good for her. Mm-hmm. She had gotten married, and he turned out to be abusive, which further fueled her drug addiction. Mm-hmm. After she gotten out of that relationship, because her daughter was taken from her and my mother was raising her. Okay. And after she gotten out of that relationship, she got into another relationship with a gentleman who, again, was an enabler to her drug habit. But the person that she married for the second time, as nice as he was, he didn't help her in her addiction.
Okay.
So in order, he wanted to keep her off the streets, so he would help her. Mm-hmm. He would constantly give her money in order for her to get drugs and to keep her high, because he wanted to keep her happy. Mm-hmm. And again, if a person is not happy within themselves, there's nothing you can do that's going to make them happy.
Absolutely.
But talking about people being in prison, and it's not just the physical prison, it's the prison in our mind. Because of what I had gone through, and I'm married now, and my husband and I, we're getting ready to celebrate 17 years of marriage. We've been together this year going on 21 years. But I needed a strong man, and God gave me the man that I needed and not the man that I wanted. Mm-hmm. But because I was determined that I was not going to be a victim, and I was not going to, again, be a victim of domestic violence, that I didn't make it easy for him. Mm-hmm. So I was always on the defense. And I thought that he was the enemy, but he used to tell me, I'm not the enemy. I didn't get into this relationship to get divorced. Right. So one particular night when I was attempting to make him leave the house.
Attempting to
make him leave the house.
Okay.
We got into a little scuffle. I called the police on him, and I wound up going to prison myself. And at that time, I was correctional officer. We actually both were correctional officers. So I wound up going to prison myself. And while I was in the back of the police cruiser being taken down to Central Booking.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm asking myself, how in the world did this happen?
What the world?
How did this happen? I called them, so why am I going to prison?
Exactly.
But God had to deal with me because he had another plan for me, and I wasn't seeing it. I was just focusing on what I wanted and what I thought was good for me. So by me being a correctional officer, when I got down to Central Booking, they didn't put me in a cell. They let me sit with the officers, and I was on a phone all night long, calling people, asking people, pray for me because I'm in jail.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. So here it is. You went from this childhood. It was good, but then there was some traumas. There were some traumas that really impacted your life and how you chose your mates. Then you get married to this great man. You have this career. You go to jail. I mean, and you met someone there. Who's Faith?
I actually didn't meet her in prison. I met her on the job that I work now, and she's an amazing woman. And how her and I met, I was introduced to her because I want to start a transitional house for women called Winning the War Within Restoration House, and I was told that she could help me since she had a transitional house of her own.
Okay.
And when I began to talk to her and I began to share with her what I was doing in writing the book, and she shared her story with me, I thought it would be a good story to share. And she gave me permission to share her story, but her story is just so amazing. When you look at people and you don't understand what they've gone through, and Faith's story and Brenda's story is so similar with the drug addictions and the bad decisions, the bad relationships, and Faith actually had experienced witnessing her mother kill her father. So what she had gone through and then going through abusive relationships, it really took a toll on her. But when she was trying to get herself together, she had wound up doing some things that eventually got her into trouble.
Okay.
And here she is, she's working a good job and making a good living, and she shared in the book that she come out one day to pay the meter for her car, and the police was sitting behind her car. And they arrested her because there was a warrant out for her arrest. That it was over 15 years old. So when she had gone to prison, the judge would not let her out. She was determined she wasn't going to let her out until she paid restitution.
Okay.
And eventually she paid it. But that's just showing us that we all have to pay for the things that we do.
Right.
The decisions we make in life, we all have to pay for it. And talking about prison, we're not just locked in the physical prison, we're locked in our minds. People are locked in prison of debt. People are locked in prisons of domestic violence. People are locked in prisons of low self-esteem. But those are things that we have the keys, but we don't know how to use them. We don't know how to get out. And I attributed that to my faith in God, that he ordered my steps, even though when I didn't understand that that's what he was doing. I don't want you to let church run you away. Church itself will run you away from God. And God called us to have a relationship with him, not with the church. So years that I had been in church and I was ostracized, I was talked about and treated very badly because people and their self-righteous attitude, they make you think that when you're not where they are or you're struggling with some things that you are not living up to what God would have you do. But none of us are perfect, and it's not that we're not living up to God's standard. It's that the man trying to make us live up to their standard.
Right.
And that's another form of imprisonment, of trying to hold people accountable for a lifestyle that you yourself are not living.
So you've started a church. You went from being a corrections officer to a pastor.
To a pastor. Who would
So
have thought?
who knew?
Who would have thought?
So where's your church, and what's the
My
name of your
church is in Baltimore, Maryland. It's called Winning the War Within Ministries, because we have to deal with all of our internal issues. Until we deal with who we really are, then we can never be who God called us to be.
Well, how did you get there, though? I mean, did you just wake up and say, I'm going to be a pastor. I want to start a church. What were the steps?
That actually was the furthest thing from my mind. And when God began to deal with me about that, first being a minister, and then being ordained as an elder, when he began to deal with me about being a pastor, I said, God, are you sure? Because I'm not there yet. You know I'm kind of rough around the edges, and I'm not the nicest person in the world. I said, are you sure? But God knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows exactly what he's called us to do. So we just have to follow his will for our life. And I find that it's the most rewarding thing that I have done. It's not easy because daily I'm working on me. Daily I'm trying to make sure that I live up to not man's standards, but God's standards.
Definitely. But how did you build that church? What did people say when you said, come to my church?
And that's not the approach that I took.
Okay.
Mostly my family's there right now, but the approach that I take is not trying to get people to come, but just trying to show people who Christ is. And when you show people who Christ is, they will want to come where you are. They will want what you want. And I think that's the hardest thing, is just showing people who Christ is.
And what part does your husband play in this? What was his thoughts?
I love my husband dearly, but he says, that's your call, not mine. So he's very supportive in that he doesn't try to stop me from doing. He wants me to go and pursue the things that God has called me to do. But he said that's not his call. So
interesting.
I don't try to push that on him.
Interesting. I thought maybe he was a co-pastor or something.
No, and that's another thing we have to understand. We have to let people be who they are.
Right.
Because you have a vision, because you have a dream, that doesn't mean everybody's going to go with you. Only God can deal with that. And if it's God's will for him to come with me, then he'll be there. If not, I'm going to leave him be and let him be who God called him to be.
So you're building churches. You're doing other things, too. Weren't you in a documentary for...
At the women's prison, when I worked at the women's prison, National Geographic did a documentary on Maryland's most dangerous women. And you can still find it on YouTube under Nat Geo, Maryland's Most Dangerous Women. And it highlighted some of the work that I did in prison. One of the things that I did was start a mentoring program. Where we would have the older, more mature women mentor the younger ones or first-time offenders. So we had the lifers mentor those that were doing life sentences or other violent crimes. And when I retired in 2009, we had about 53 mentors and 179 mentees in the program.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty nice.
But the focus is, especially with women, because we compete so much with each other. Rather than try to build one another up, we try to tear one another down because we're competing for something that, if it's for us, we'll get it anyway. Nobody can take it from us. So I had them focus on their similarities rather than focusing on their differences. Because when we see how similar we are, then we realize that, we have a lot to offer each other.
Right.
And seeing how similar we are, I understood that even though they were on one side of the prison door and I was on the other, it could have easily been me because of the decisions that I could have made, but I didn't make.
Well, this is Pastor Debbora Hanna on opposite sides of the door. You can get a copy of this. Mine is all, look, let me cover all my sticky notes. You can get a copy of the book on Amazon. Go to Barnes & Nobles. It's $12. You can get it on Kindle.
For $5?
For $5? Read it on your little Nook. I am so proud that you're here and you're doing this.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am so proud. I mean, it's your story. You've watched yourself evolve and you're helping others evolve. And that's phenomenal.
Because we do. We have so much to offer. We have so much to offer each other. I can't do it without Dr. Holly. The opportunity she gave me just to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. I mean, you do not hear many people talk about women in prison. We know they're in prison, okay? But it's like they're forgotten. And what's going on and what happened. And your life, this book chronicles things that happened in your life, in your sister's life, in Faith's life, that brought you to that point. But you said you were going to be a victor.
Yes, not a victim.
There's a difference.
We all have a decision. We can choose the way our life is going to be. You can either accept life the way it is and allow it to destroy you, or you can rise above all of the foolishness, the ashes, and the trauma, and become who God created you to be.
And that's important, that ladies out there know this, that you tell your daughters this, because there's a cycle, and that's what you're doing. You're breaking a cycle. You know, because instantly, you know, when someone hears that you've had a child at 14, they're like, huh? Never in a million years that you've experienced all this. When I opened your book and I saw that you were violated by 2 neighborhood boys, folks you knew.
Yes. One of them I did know.
Gunpoint. And you kept it in. I was floored.
But our experiences don't define who we are.
There you go.
It's what we do with those experiences that will determine who we become.
And who you help. Because we all have a purpose.
Yes.
And you have definitely found your purpose. But I just want to thank you for coming out and joining us on this marvelous Monday.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. And every time I encounter you, I learn more and more about you, and I admire you more and more.
Thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you. I really appreciate it.
You know, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I don't talk junk. I don't talk junk. I mean what I say. I truly do, because you're this statuous person to me, and I see you with your faith, and you always said to me in my presence, God's still working on me.
Absolutely. When
someone else would say, I'm a pastor and I'm this and you should do that, and you know, it's always something about being in that, at that status.
Because we haven't arrived. None of us have arrived.
Right.
And I don't care how long we've been in the church, none of us have arrived. We're still in the flesh. We still have our own mess. We still have our junk in our trunk that we're dealing with. And I tell my congregation, you know, every Sunday, if God was to pull back the covers on our stuff, I wouldn't want nobody to see it. Thank God for grace and mercy.
Well, I thank God for having you here tonight. And I thank everyone who is watching tonight. And I hope you felt her message. You really did, because there are women out there that are grasping for the keys. Keep grabbing, because you're going to get them.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And remember, work like you don't need the money, love like you've never been hurt, and dance like nobody's looking. We'll talk later.
Are you or someone you know suffering from stress, anxiety, or depression? Have you experienced feelings of frustration due to lack of family and/or career support? Let's talk. Relationship issues got you down? Get the help you need. Contact Dr. Sheba Holly, mental health advisor and life coach, at clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly. If confidentiality, comfort, and convenience is important to you, guidance is provided on your terms. You deserve peace of mind. Contact Dr. Sheba Holly, mental health advisor and life coach, at clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly. Get answers now. Make your appointment today. Let's talk. Clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly. Talks with Sheba. Be empowered.